If your boat stays in the water at least part of the year, having good bottom paint is critical to keeping your boat performing its best and reducing fuel costs. I'm Chuck Hawley, and with me today is Kevin Osborne. Today we're going to discuss what products you need to keep your boat's hull protected, clean and free of critters. We'll also cover how to prep the bottom and properly apply paints.
Knowing which products to use and how to use them can save you hundreds of dollars over the cost of having the work performed by a yard. For those in northern climates who have scheduled launch dates, getting work done by the yard prior to launch can also be a challenge. Doing the work yourself gives you the satisfaction and peace of mind of a job done right. Bottom painting is a breeze if you know what you're doing.
Doing this project yourself is not only economical, but most work can be completed in a single weekend. So let's get started. Most boaters find bottom painting tedious and messy, but it's also one of the most important preventative maintenance tasks in keeping your boat performing its best. A clean bottom is safe, fast, and efficient. Bottom growth reduces speed and maneuverability and increases fuel consumption. There are many types of bottom paints, otherwise known as anti-fouling paints, available, and your choices will be primarily determined by what type of boating you do, where you boat, and what type of bottom paint has been applied previously. Bottom paints reduce marine growth of barnacles, plants, and algae by releasing toxic biocides at a controlled rate. The most popular biocides are copper compounds, like cuprous oxide, and generally speaking, the higher copper content, the more effective the anti-fouling properties. Many of today's high-tech bottom paints also contain slimicides, which act as sort of a sunscreen for your paint at the waterline. By filtering out UV at the surface, algae and slime cannot form since the chemical prevents photosynthesis, thus boosting your anti-fouling protection. Look for slimicides on your favorite paints by their trade names of Biolux or Aerosol.
Interlux and Pettit both make a full line of excellent quality bottom paints. There are 5 primary types of anti-fouling paints. Pay attention, as there are pros and cons to each of them, so choosing the one that best fits your type of boating and works well in your area is important. You must also consider the compatibility with any existing bottom paint you'll be painting over. Generally, softer paints can be applied over harder paints, but not vice versa. There are exceptions, however, as it's always best to consult a compatibility chart. Let's review each type. Modified epoxies are hard, durable finishes. They're generally economically priced and relatively effective in all types of water. Those with higher copper content will generally last longer in higher fouling areas, like the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic. Modified epoxies are generally good only one season in climates where the boat is hauled and launched each fall and spring. The paint continues to harden when out of the water and exposed to air, thus reducing the paint's ability to leach the copper biocide. This means if you stick with a modified epoxy, plan on repainting every year in northern climates and every 1 to 2 years in southern climates. Since these types of paint do not wear away, buildup will continue to occur with each new coat and eventually will need to be stripped. Modified epoxies are the most flexible in compatibility, and they can be applied over almost all paints as long as the surface is properly sanded. 2 very popular modified epoxies are West Marine Bottom Shield CCT and Interlux Fiberglass Bottom Coat Classic. These paints are very economical compared to the more sophisticated ablative paints or higher copper modified epoxies. They're hard, durable finishes between 28% and 35% copper content. These paints are great in low to moderate fouling areas and can be used on fiberglass, wood, or properly primed steel hulls. The new West Marine Bottom Shield CCT, which stands for Composite Copper Technology, uses a new formula which allows the copper to surround silica, thus providing the same great anti-fouling protection with 25% less toxic release into the environment. If you live in a higher fouling area and keep your boat in the water year-round, a high copper modified epoxy is a good option. Pettit Trinidad SR and Interlux Ultra offer great protection with 67 to 70% copper content. And because they have such a high copper content, they may last a bit longer as well before losing their effectiveness. These paints also have slimicides to reduce fouling near the waterline.
Ablative paints continue to gain popularity each year. Ablatives have a semi-hard finish, but wear away at a controlled rate, much like a bar of soap. This not only allows a continually fresh layer of copper biocide to be exposed, but reduces or eliminates buildup. Single-season ablatives are meant to do just that. They will need to be repainted each season if the boat is hauled for winter storage, just like a modified epoxy. 2 of our most popular single-season ablative paints are West Marine CPP and Interlux ACT. CPP is an affordable, high-quality ablative paint. It has 38% copper content, and it is a great choice for all fiberglass, wood, or primed steel hulls. Interlux ACT is similar to West Marine CPP, but has a slightly lower copper content, around 29%. It does, however, contain ergorol for slime prevention as an added benefit. Multi-season ablatives allow the user to paint several coats at once and haul and launch repeatedly without having to repaint. The paint is reactivated by scrubbing or a light sanding, and you're ready for another season. This is a huge time saver for those living in northern climates and those in the south looking for a high-quality paint that will not lose effectiveness over an extended time without a haul-out. These paints offer the ultimate in low-maintenance anti-fouling protection, but the cost is more than in modified epoxies. They also require multiple coat applications in the first year, but are well worth the cost and effort to eliminate 2 or 3 years of annual painting. One tip when applying a multi-season ablative: apply the base coat in a contrasting color to the subsequent coats. This will allow you to see visible evidence when the paint is worn away to the base coat and is in need of repainting. Ablatives are compatible with most paints by simply sanding the old coat and applying. Multi-season ablatives have become so popular that most boaters have myriad of choices, including several with different slimicide additives as well as different copper compounds which allow for bright color options. Two great choices in general multi-season ablatives are Interlux Micron CSC and Petit Hydrocoat. Micron CSC is a quality paint which has proven very effective over the years. It has a 37% copper content and can be used as each of the paints we have mentioned so far on fiberglass, wood, and properly primed steel boats. Petit Hydrocoat has a slightly higher copper content at 40% and offers the added benefit of being water-based product. This means it's not only more environmentally friendly, but also has fewer solvents and less fumes and easier cleanup. If you're looking for an even better performing multi-season ablative, consider Micron Extra or West Marine PCA. Both paints contain between 37 and 40% copper and also have slimicide agents to keep waterline growth to a minimum. One more option to consider in ablatives is color. Petit Vivid and Interlux Trilux 33 both provide the advantages of an ablative paint with the added benefit of bright color options, including white. All paints mentioned so far have fairly traditional and drab color choices like dark blue, dark red, dark green, and black. These paints also use cuprous oxide as their primary copper compound. Vivid and Trilux 33 use a newer copper compound called copper thiocyanate to achieve great anti-fouling protection and resulting in bright colors. These paints can be used on all types of boats as we previously listed, but are also the only paint suitable for use on aluminum. Since copper and aluminum are dissimilar metals, applying a traditional copper paint directly to an aluminum hull would be disastrous. Galvanic corrosion would begin immediately, and the hull would quickly deteriorate. For best results, aluminum boat owners should still prime their hull with an appropriate zinc chromate or strontium chromate primer, such as Petit Alumiprotect, before applying either Vivid or Trilux 33.
Thin film paints are very popular in freshwater markets. They're very thin, almost water-like, and gain their anti-fouling properties by providing both a copper biocide, which is included in a powder form that must be mixed in with the paint, and a super slick surface that most freshwater organisms find very difficult to bond to. Their slick surface makes them especially popular with racing sailors and go-fast powerboaters. The most popular thin film paint is Interlux VC17M. This paint dries almost instantly, allowing for quick paint and launch, and because they're so thin, they must be applied with either a solvent-resistant foam roller head cover or by spraying with an airless sprayer. Again, these paints are only effective in fresh water. There are two other types of paints to discuss. Although neither are as popular as today's modified epoxies and ablatives, we feel you should still know about them. Soft or sloughing paints used to be very popular among cruising sailors in northerly climates, since they're very economical and last for a little more than a season. They wear away by the water motion, so the more the boat is used and the faster it goes, the quicker the paint wears away. Few paints can be applied over sloughing paints due to their very soft nature. Vinyl-based paints are very slick, hard paints that can be burnished to provide a smooth surface. Unlike thin film Teflon paints, they can be used in salt water. While their effectiveness is not as good as the better quality modified epoxies and ablatives, they do provide an excellent option for those boaters looking for enhanced speed performance in salt water. Vinyl-based paints are the least compatible, as they cannot be applied over any other paints other than an existing vinyl paint, and are very difficult to get a good bond when painting over without a very thorough sanding. Our last group of paints to mention is aerosol anti-fouling paints. These paints were developed to spray on underwater metal such as outdrives and props to keep them as clean as the freshly painted bottom. Since cuprous oxide is not used as the anti-fouling agent, galvanic corrosion is not a problem. Surfaces do need to be primed, however, prior to the paint application. Interlux Prop and Drive or Petit Alumispray both offer good protection from fouling, but use different biocides. Alumispray is only available in black, while Prop and Drive is offered in 3 different colors, plus they offer it in clear.
Before we cover the paint application process, we should discuss barrier coats and prevention of gel coat blistering. If your boat has blisters, they should be fixed now, or the problem will only worsen. If your boat does not currently show any signs of blistering, it's still an excellent time to consider applying a barrier coat to prevent any potential blistering problems in the future. Blistering occurs as water is absorbed through the hull throughout the season and causes the gel coat and underlying fiberglass to delaminate. Blisters can come in many sizes, but usually look as though your hull is a bad case of the chicken pox. They occur more frequently in warmer climates where boats are likely to be in the water for longer stretches of time. However, they can still plague boaters everywhere. Blisters can occur on boats of any age at any time. If your boat develops blisters, there is a multi-step process involved to fix them. Interlux and Petit both have blister repair guides to help with the process. Of course, the best way to deal with blisters is to prevent them from occurring in the first place. Barrier coats are designed to do just that. Incidentally, if you haul your boat and discover blisters, a handy technique is to scuff sand the blistered areas to remove the bottom paint that's on top of each blister. That will identify their location so you can grind down to the solid fiberglass laminate and remove all of the blistered gel coat. This will also make the hull dry out faster. By providing an impermeable layer of epoxy between the paint and the hull, water cannot be absorbed and therefore blisters do not form. Petit Protect 4700 and Interlux Interprotect 2000 are both great barrier coat products which are easy for the do-it-yourselfer to apply.
If you plan on applying a barrier coat, you need to start with a clean hull. This means 2 bare gel coat clean. All remnants of old paint must be removed to get a good bond with the fiberglass. If the barrier coat is to be applied on a new hull, prepping the surface is as simple as cleaning the hull of mold release agents with a solvent wash such as Interlux 202. Next, lightly sand the surface with 80 grit sandpaper and you're ready to apply the barrier coat. If you have an older boat with existing bottom paint, the old paint must be sanded or stripped off. Interlux Interstrip 299E works great and makes the job much easier than traditional sanding. Once the old paint is removed, wash the bottom with a solvent wash and apply the barrier coat per the manufacturer's instructions. A few important things to remember before starting this project. Number 1, make sure you have the right amount of product to apply the necessary coats. The thickness or millage of the epoxy coating is vital to completely seal the surface. Number 2, pick a time when you will have good weather to complete all applications. Number 3, make sure you have the right safety gear, including respirators and eye protection. Both Interlux and Petit barrier coat products require a minimum of 10 to 12 mil thickness, and you can expect about 2.5 mils per coat from Interprotect and about 4 mils per coat from Petit Protect. Do the math, and that means 3 to 4 coats minimum to do the job right, depending on the product you select. Calculate the per coat requirements by looking at the theoretical coverage indicated on the product. You can get a rough estimate of square footage of your boat's bottom by taking the length overall times the beam times 0.75. You'll need to work with temperatures above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and there is a window of 3 hours to 2 weeks between coats. If you wait beyond the 2-week window, you may need to sand the surface again before applying the next coat.
Let's move on to prepping our boat for the application of bottom paint. If you decided to tackle the barrier coat project, a light sanding with 120 grit sandpaper after the final coat is all that's necessary to prep the boat for paint. If you're painting a new boat for the first time, you must wipe down the entire bottom with good solvent wash, such as Interlux 202 or Petit Dewaxer, to get rid of all mold release agents from the factory. To avoid reapplying the mold release agents, turn your cloth frequently and use plenty of them. You can then either lightly sand the hull with 120 grit sandpaper, or many people prefer to use a no-sand primer instead, such as Interlux Fiberglass No Sand Primer or Pettit Skip Sand Primer. But since most of us will be recoating over a previously painted bottom, we'll need to make sure that the surface is prepped for another coat. Power washing works great to remove any remaining dirt or light fouling. For heavier fouling, use a strong acid-based bottom cleaner, such as Mary Kate's On-Off. Be sure to wear eye protection, a good respirator, and rubber gloves, as this cleaner is very caustic. Once the surface is thoroughly dried, we're ready to sand. Sanding is necessary to give the old paint some tooth to hold the fresh paint. Bottom paints are toxic by nature, and most are solvent-based. You should always try to cover exposed skin, eyes, and wear a respirator to avoid breathing any toxic fumes. We'll be using a disposable coverall suit, gloves, and a high-quality goggles with a dual cartridge respirator. First, lay out a large tarp or drop cloth to cover the entire work area. Knock off any loose paint with a scraper. Then, using either a sanding block or a dustless DA sander, lightly sand the entire bottom with 80 grit sandpaper. Make sure to spend a little extra time on the high or uneven areas. We want the bottom as smooth as possible to minimize drag. Work around transducers, prop shaft struts, and outdrives. When you've finished sanding, wipe down the surface with a tack cloth or rag. Next, select a masking tape that's right for the job. Some things to keep in mind when selecting a tape. General purpose tapes are only designed to be left on the surface for about 24 hours or less, unless you want a lengthy job of trying to remove the tape. Selecting long mask tape is a much better option when bottom painting, especially when applying multiple coats. We've chosen 3M's 2090 Scotch Blue Painter's Tape, which is UV stable and can be left on for up to 60 days. Try to tape as close to the existing boot stripe as possible. Start from a natural break point in the line and draw the tape 1.5 to 2 feet out for a smooth, even line. And be sure to tape around transducers, prop shaft struts, and through hulls, or any other metals, as the copper in the paint will react with the other metals, causing galvanic corrosion.
Okay, now we are ready to paint. Make sure to select the right paint accessories to match the type of paint you're applying. For most bottom paint applications, rolling works best. A 3/8 nap solvent-resistant roller cover is the ideal match for most bottom paints. One exception is the thin film paint such as VC17M. These paints are too thin for such a heavy nap and work best either rolled with a solvent-resistant foam roller cover or sprayed with an airless sprayer. Make sure to get a few sizes of chip brushes to cut around the mast area and at the waterline. Don't be tempted to try and use household variety roller covers, brushes, or tray liners. Solvents used in bottom paints are much hotter than latex or oil-based paints and will likely dissolve the products. Also, have the paint shaken just prior to application. This will make stirring the copper back into solution much easier, which can settle into a thick mass at the bottom of the can over time. After thoroughly stirring the paint, pour into a paint tray and begin rolling the paint evenly from one end of the boat to the other. Recoating should be done following the manufacturer's recommendations. Times can vary based on paint type and temperature. Most also have a minimum and maximum required drying time prior to launch, so be sure to factor that into the equation as well. Once the paint has dried, remove all masking tape and clean up the area. Be sure to properly dispose of the old paint and any solvents used for cleanup. If your boat is on jack stands or a cradle, painting under pads can be tricky. Depending on the drying time for the paint, you may be able to paint under the pads or bunks when the boat is slung for launch. Check with your yard. Some paints will dry adequately in the short time the boat is in the air. And that's it. Your boat is now ready for a season full of barnacle-free activity.
Well, that about covers it. Completing each of the key steps to paint your boat bottom is easy if you know what to do and when to do it. We hope this video has helped answer all of your questions and has demonstrated the right products to do the job right the first time. Follow the proper steps and you can help ensure a trouble-free season of boating ahead. Thanks for watching.